I do not believe in this dichotomy anymore, and neither should you. Historical or fantasy is simply a way to distinguish a game through the place it drew inspiration from, Warhammer or medieval Europe. One is fantasy, the other is historical, and yet both are video games that take countless freedoms from their source materials. Say the recruitment systems of the Lizardmen that don't take into account they are born from puddles of mud bred for war background, or the recruitment system of Medieval 2 that doesn't really take into account the population numbers in a settlement. The main reason why Total War's community is divided is the nature of the fantasy games versus the nature of the games that are more grounded in history. Their mechanics and focuses. I am certain that a lot of the historical players would marvel at the reveal of Total War, Lord of the Rings, or Total War, Game of Thrones. What really matters is that these games are well executed, that they have the right mechanics and the right depth to each of those mechanics. They should be easy to learn and hard to master. More player freedom. Having played Shogun 2 recently, it felt like a breath of fresh air. The campaign mechanics that at the first glance seem bare bones all help the player achieve their ultimate goal by forcing strategical decision making to overcome a myriad of different complex situations. This classic situation is which building to build and where to build. How long will my units take to reach the front lines? Which regions should produce food and which should consume food? Should I build a certain building to unlock a certain unit, or will my current army work? Should I build an economic building to make some more cash? Will my next opponent be weak to a unit I have yet to unlock? Should I research through the sword or the spear tree, or should I go through diplomacy? The questions are endless and they remain important throughout the length of the campaign. That said, Shogun 2 wasn't perfect and it could use depth to its mechanics. For a Game of Thrones game, I'd expect a much more intricate diplomacy system, a court mechanic where certain characters could unlock certain tactical or strategical possibilities, perhaps an intricate vassal system, etc. Effectively turning Game of Thrones Total War into a more, well, historical game. While in Lord of the Rings, I would expect there to be many events regarding lore, like the Ents or the Balrog, even the main ring storyline, a clear dynamic between good versus evil, where you could, over time, maybe align your faction to either one regardless of where you started. Again, player freedom. This would be less historical, and yet, as Third Age Total War has showed us, if the base mechanics are there, historical players will love it. Because in reality, there's no such thing as historical players. We're all just looking for a good game. If taking a look at all huge Medieval 2 fantasy mods is any indication of it, historical players are eager to play in fantasy universes from high to low fantasy. Heck, there is Skyrim Total War, Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, Warcraft, Game of Thrones, and many others. Even in Attila, Dawnless Days, a mod based on Lord of the Rings, is one of the most anticipated mods out there. Historical players are fantasy players. Historical players are just players who didn't find Warhammer appealing due to its mechanics and focus on creating doom stacks, of stacking different buffs from different mechanics in the game. There are overpowered units and there's a lack of need for strategical thinking, especially as the campaign progresses. And there are other historical games that can boast of huge modding communities with historical and fantasy mods alike. Mount and Blade Bannerlords comes to mind, and you might say that, oh, but Bannerlords is not set in real history. Well, yes, but it's based in real history, with the Roman Empire or the fall of the Roman Empire playing out in front of your eyes. Players are not either fantasy or historical players. In my opinion, they're not. Players just want good games regardless of the setting. You know, yes, some people will prefer historical settings, some people will prefer fantasy universes, and that's all fine. Because a good game is very subjective as well. I'm sure a lot of Total War players will love and even prefer Warhammer to the Total War games of old, and I can definitely respect that. At the end of the day, if Creative Assembly gives us an amazing Total War experience, I think everybody will take it. But can Creative Assembly really do that? Well, I'll let you discuss that in the comments below. I've been Wolf, and I'll see you next time.